Does God really exist? And did Jesus even exist too? Welcome back, everyone, to The Glog, the show where we take a little bit of a vlog, a lot of bit of God, and make it into a video where you can ask questions, and we will try to answer them. And today's question is not really from anyone in particular, but it's a question that I think is it is the most important question anyone can ever ask themselves, and that is, does God exist? And did Jesus exist? Now, I'm going to put these two questions together because I think they go hand in hand, but these questions are the most important questions in the entire universe, which is important. If you think about it like this, the story of Jesus really comes down to two things. It is either a huge lie that has tricked millions of people, or it's the greatest fact in the history of the universe. And I'm going to tell you why it's the second option. To get this information to you, though, I'm going to use my handy-dandy phone, because there's several things to talk about, but I'm going to keep this brief. So the first thing we need to ask ourselves is the following. We have to ask ourselves these questions in order to know where we are in thinking about God. We have to ask, how did something come from nothing? Whether that's the entire universe, that's just ourselves, we have to ask, how did anything at all happen? Something had to have come from nothing. Or the case may be something else, which we'll get to in a minute. Where did the Big Bang come from? That's another thing. Where did anything come from if there was nothing? And then that leads into, did God always exist? Because if God always existed, then that means everything could have come from God, and God always was. So there was really no beginning for God. Which, if we try to think about it, it's impossible. Try to think of something that has no beginning. You can't, can you? Neither can I. Don't worry. Everyone in the world will not be able to tell you anything that has no beginning. Because we are only known to know things with beginnings. A book has a beginning, life has a beginning, but God doesn't have a beginning. We have to also ask ourselves, if God doesn't exist, is everything just a big coincidence? Is it just a random chance that there was a Big Bang? That the world did get created? That people were somehow evolved into what we are today? Think of how complex you are. Just take a look at your hand, your fingerprints, the way you're able to feel things and touch things and your emotions. Think of all of those things. How can those be just big coincidences? They have to have been planned. We also have to think about where our morals come from. Why is murder bad? Yes, we know it's bad. We can tell just by thinking about it, but how do we know? And finally, if evolution is the case, then where did the blueprints for evolution come from? Those are all important questions we have to ask ourselves about God. Next, we have to look at this quote that I have that is from Rich Dean. He is a Bachelor of Science in Biological Studies, and basically, to sum it up, he says that there is a designer of the universe. Someone or something had to design the universe, even if it was... I'm not going to say that science is not the case, because science explains a lot of the universe, but that doesn't mean that God didn't create science. So if we think of in terms of God creating science, we can understand that God does make sense in the universe and that He did design it. The next thing we have to ask ourselves is about the identity of God. Now, there are a lot of identities of God through all different kinds of religions, but today we're going to take a look at the Bible's interpretation, because several religions in the world do look at the Old Testament of the Bible. Adam and Eve, Noah, Abraham, those kind of people from the Bible we're going to talk about today. And these two Bible verses that are popping up for you right now, they are actually both from the Old Testament. This is before Jesus was even around, probably 1,000 years or so before, at least several hundred. So we know that these Bible verses talk about the coming of a hero that would save people from the things they've done wrong. Because think about it, you've done things wrong, I've done things wrong, we've all messed up from time to time, but we have to remember that God is perfect, and any little mistake is big to Him. However, We needed a hero to forgive us. And that is where Jesus comes in. If you take a look at this, you can see a quote from Josephus, who was a Jewish priest who did not believe that Jesus was God, yet he did say that he was a real man that lived on earth. So whether or not Jesus was God or not, which really comes down to your faith and trusting in him, we know that he was a real person who walked along the earth just like you and me because he was a man. And he did, in this quote at least, was assumed to perform miracles. So when it comes down to it, while it's controversial, evidence does point to a creator. Historical documents also identify Jesus as being a real man. And finally, the Bible says, and Jesus says, that no one comes to the Father, no one comes to God the Father except through him. So if we believe in Jesus, and we know that he is the truth, we will go to heaven and we will know God because he is in us. I hope that answered your question. I'm sorry I tried to get a whole bunch of stuff in there, but I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Glog. Leave your comments, questions, concerns, whatever, in the comment section below, and we will try to answer them. Thank you again as always, and take care.